A fairly recent addition that came along with plenty of spawns and became one of the best. This is Ingol -3. This spawn was the main attraction for the Winter Update 2022, and what made it great is that Ingol is on its own island, with a total of 5 floors and its surface, all of them with a high density of monsters, making some of them quite viable for team hunting. I already covered how to do the surface and -1, and this video will cover the 3rd floor, which is the best spawn. The other floors are hardly ever used, I tried to make them work, but -3 is simply the best. Now, in order to be able to hunt here, you need to start the quest of the crowd of monsters up until you complete mission 4. That's where you get access to the 3rd floor. The rest of the quest is recommended for access to the monster, and to do that boss on the way out of your hunts, but that's optional. Defensively, you want to stock up on energy protection. The EK takes mainly physical and energy, with death closely behind, but mages take a lot more of energy, so defensive imbuements are quite good here. Offensively, the best rune to use is Ice followed by Fire. Most of the time, sorcerers should use GPs for the runic mastery buff, but EKs should go for ice damage weapons. In some cases, especially the lower level EKs, might want to go for a one-handed weapon to use a shield. And in those cases, your best options most likely will be Fire or Death, and that will be fine to use. I do highly recommend to go for a defensive approach as the EK, since in this spawn the mages will be at more risk and druids usually end up playing their life more than anything. And in terms of builds, with the range of levels I will be recommended, it's hard to pinpoint a specific build, but prioritize AoE, so exotic mass on the EK with perhaps more points on HP or energy protection gems. RP should aim for high points on grenade, as the creatures are very weak to holy, but at the same time, unfortunately, if the mages are higher levels, they will destroy the pulse before the grenade pops, so buffs on the mass stance are a good option. Druids seem to find good results with the bigger mass rest, as that allows them to use it more often to heal themselves and the EK/RP, but Twin Burst is also quite good. As for the Sorcerer, I think the best case scenario is to go with buffs on your UE, especially with a greater gem for damage, but if that's not an option, then my MS will just go with Runic Mastery, and that works pretty good as well. As for the spawn itself, in this floor, you find mainly 3 creatures, and the other 3 from the surface are less common, making this in theory a spawn for XP, but it ends up being quite profitable for teams hunting here. The bestiary depends on the levels and the lab you do, but it will be around the 5 hours for Bormans and Lyodiles, with 6 for the Carniv Ostrich. Lastly, for some general recommendations for the spawn, the preferred hunting style consists of massive lures and running in circles around the EK. It's important for starters that the Paladin doesn't sidebox on the lower levels and first couple hunts, because most of the times doing that right away drops all the creatures on the mages outside, and that makes things harder on them. But also, if the ED is not using mass rest for whatever reason, then you won't be able to sustain on your own. So start with semi-kiting, and once the team feels comfortable, start doing the side boxes if possible. EK, be mindful of your own survivability, as the druid tends to play his life more. It means you're more likely to be healing yourself with supremes on the pulse to be healthy enough. And the ED should still be using mass rest and seals when possible, especially to sustain the Paladin as well. Additionally, the EK's role in this hunt is pretty simple. You will be there to grab loot and to make the Carniv Ostrich melee, basically constant spamming of the Amp Rest spell, often despite not having room on your box. Since there is a lot of them, if left in range, they will be making walls with their bodies, making it harder on the mages to move around. So it's preferred for them to be on melee and following the path of the shooters instead. Both mages also need to be timing their UEs, not necessarily together. In fact, often mages will end up using UEs on the same pool, but at different moments, and that's because you pretty much use it on cooldown or on a case by case, deciding if it's needed to clear a massive pool, make room to pass through, or to finish up creatures before moving to the next. Now for the labs, I will be doing one for level 600, 800 and 1k, but be aware that hunting at 600 is not easy and there is better spawns at that level range. With that said, let's break down the labs. The first pool is north of the entrance. During the actual lab, everyone comes from the south, and then RP lures a few north of the spot over here. Next pool after that, RP goes by himself and lures from the north of this pool, and everyone else takes the left to this spot. MS should go a bit further to the left to grab about 2 or 3 creatures that lurk around there. Then coming up, RP goes through the left and lures from that side. Meanwhile, the 3 of us take the right and slowly lure everything on the path to this spot. For the next one, the Paladin goes southwest and everyone else through the north side, again slowly luring everything on the path to meet up around here. Next up will be southwest with the RP coming from the north, while the rest is doing the pull there. Then after that is to the southeast. Everyone goes together, and then before this mountain, split up 2 people on each side to lure the creatures, setting up around here. Then everyone goes southwest and RP lure from the northwest. Be careful for this one, as there is less space for moving and obstacles on the way as well. The next pool we will have the Paladin lure from the east, but that does make this pool highly dangerous, so be mindful of that. It's not truly necessary to do it this way. You can save the RP lure for the next pool if needed, which will be just by the east. For us, the RP should bring out a few creatures from the cabin southeast, while the rest of us will bring the creatures on the way to the spot. After that, you are back to the first pool and the lap is completed. At this level in particular, it's not necessary to do the entire lap, but we had worse results cutting it in half. Regardless, on low level 600s, no charms or XP average was of 6.1kk. Charms can put it at around the 6.5kk, and we also did a few adaptations to fit in a 5th person. With him, the XP will be around the 6.2kk as well. With soul cores and better characters, this lap I believe should be around the 7kk. Now moving on for the next one, we're far higher levels than the recommendation. That's because the recording I have was right after we upgraded our characters and moved servers, which you can find out more about in this video. But before we move, we were using roughly this same lap on the level 700s. With that out of the way, the first pool is around the same area. Coming from the south, both EK and ED stay together, luring slowly while attacking the creatures. And the RP with DMS will have gone through the left and lured that whole side together. The next pool is on the same spot as the previous lap, but this time the EK-ED will be luring the southeast side together. Meanwhile, the MS will have gone first and head out to the northeast to lure from there, and the RP comes with a lure from the southwest, meeting up in the same spot. And by the way, I recommend to stand one spot to the north, so that as the EK you are still visible when mages are crossing the stone in the northwest corner. Moving on, the next pool is to the left. The MS and RP will run ahead to lure from the left side, while the EK and ED bring the creatures on the way there. Next up is far south. RP goes ahead to lure southeast from the spot. Meanwhile, everyone else brings creatures from the north, with the MS being the last bringing the ones in the back. Then for the next one, the RP goes backwards and through the left side, and everyone else goes south. EK is slightly ahead with the ED, and MS bringing the ones left behind. Meanwhile, the RP brings his lure, and that will be the last pool of this lap. After this, go back towards the entrance for the first pool. Hunting like this with the level 950 average team, we were doing around the 9.5kk, with no soul cores and bad equipments, so there is easily room for it to be over the 10kk. And in the case of the level 700s, our experience was in the 8kks range with this lap. For the next one, the levels recommended are around the 1k. Unfortunately, the levels on the recording are higher than recommended again. We did start doing it on average at low 1ks, but I didn't make any recordings. While making this video, I realized that and had to convince my team to come back for a short hunt to record the lap, and that's what I will be using. With that said, let's break down this lap. The first pool is on the same side as before. However, it's important that both RP and MS go ahead as their lures are further and longer. Meanwhile, the ED and EK also slowly lure everything from the south, with either one peeking towards the entrance to grab a few more on the way. Then meet it up with the RP first, and usually the MS comes last. For the next one, again RP and MS sprint ahead for their respective lures to the northwest and northeast. Meanwhile, EK goes through the west and lures a few monsters from there, while ED slowly grabs what's left on the way to the pool from the southeast. For the most part, the ED is the first to get there and should do a wide lap around while waiting for the others. Next up, RP go far southwest, ED to the left side, and MS lures from the northwest. Meanwhile, the EK has the smaller lure, just the creatures around the spot. Normally, I will just set up quick and start doing an A-box on my own to get it low enough by the time the ED comes in first with his lure. After this pool goes southeast by the middle. For this one, EK and RP are the ones going ahead, with EK just barely going inside this part of the cave to grab the few creatures around there, so that when the MS goes past this point, he is able to lure creatures easier. Meanwhile, RP has gone southeast and ED is slowly dragging the creatures left on the way from the north. For this pool in particular, I like to stand 2 squares off this stone as a reference point. Next up, both mages go through the left and lure from there. Meanwhile, RP goes southeast for his lure, and as the EK, I go in slightly into the cave to grab the creatures nearby. Even though the mages will be coming from there, it helps to not have these on the way of their lure. With that, we're back to the first pool, hence finishing the lap. Hunting like this, we were sitting close to the 12kk raw XP, but keep in mind this is with a slightly higher level than recommended, and 2 of the good soul cores, and without those and lower levels, we were still sitting around the 11kk raw, while making over the 1kk profit per person, making this one of the best spawns out there for balanced high XP and profit. But if you are looking for other options to hunt, check out this playlist for more thing hunting guides. Thank you for watching, and consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed the content. And a special thanks to the supporters of the channel, the Guild Causality, Night Star, and Tuna Hero.